So season 5 of The Flash finally ended not too long ago, and the finale was surprisingly pretty good. I mean, I'd have been happy with just an ending. Seriously, all that bullshit with Cicada just being allowed to leave after every episode, and that weird anti-Barry stance Iris kept taking throughout the season fucking sucked.
That she was working with Thawne? That doesn't bother you?
No, it doesn't.
But thankfully though, the season finale actually managed to move past all the stuff that didn't work in this season, while also building on all the stuff that did, giving us a pretty decent finale that actually left a ton of people, including yours truly, pretty excited to see what all happens in the next season. But as good as that finale was though, it seems like it gave some new life to a question that stretched back a few seasons of the show now. How exactly does Eobard Thawne's timeline even work? I mean, earlier seasons already made it seem pretty crazy, but now we're looking at multiple cicadas, alternate timeline daughters, on top of time remnants and vague explanations.
I watched you die.
Or did you?
Seriously, how the fuck does any of this make any sense? Well, believe it or not, but thanks to one quick scene in the later stages of season 5, we actually got a decent explanation as to why Eobard can, for example, get erased from history or make changes to the timeline, while also still remembering events he couldn't possibly know about later in his personal timeline.
Cisco and Caitlin and I, as you know, worked together for some time.
But before we can get into how exactly Eobard can keep all that information moving through time though, let's see if we can piece together his timeline as we've seen it up till this point. So as we heard from Eobard himself in the season 1 finale Fast Enough, Thawne was born halfway through the 22nd century in the year 2151. He became a huge fan of the Flash and idolized the long-gone speedster, and, after trying to be just like him, managed to duplicate the reaction that gave Barry his powers and became a full-on speedster. Unfortunately for him though, a few quick trips through history forced him to realize that he wouldn't be able to follow in his idol's footsteps, instead being destined to become the Flash's arch-nemesis, the Reverse Flash, the reverse of everything Barry stands for. As the Reverse Flash, Eobard created the negative Speed Force and began traveling back in time to assault his former idol, with the two becoming bitter enemies, neither one being able to defeat the other. Frustrated by being defeated over and over again, Eobard eventually started running back in time to see if he could figure out who the Flash really is. And thanks to the season 2 episode The Reverse Flash Returns, we can see that Eobard was at least somewhat successful on one of those trips, managing to meet versions of Barry and Harrison Wells. Obviously the trip would have been a lot different for Eobard going through the original timeline rather than the Arrowverse timeline as we were introduced to it, given how different the Flash's origin is between both timelines, but exactly how different it would have been, I have no idea. What I do know is that, eventually, Thawne discovered that the Flash is really CSI Barry Allen, and, during the Crisis event in 2024, ran back in time to the year 2000 to try and kill Barry as a child, thereby erasing the Flash from history. He's quickly followed by future Barry though, and the two begin fighting in the Allen house, eventually leading to future Barry running his younger self down the street and away from Eobard's wrath. Frustrated with yet another defeat, Eobard decided to kill Nora Allen instead, assuming that a horrible tragedy would do the same trick and keep Barry off the hero path. Unfortunately for him though, this idea had some consequences. Without the Flash or a steady power source for the negative Speed Force, Eobard's abilities were drained, leaving him stranded back in time.
Your latest time jump against the Flash caused a massive drain on your powers. Your cells contain no trace of the Speed Force.
But rather than pulling a Biff and just getting rich and living the good life, Eobard instead decided to track down and murder Harrison Wells. The idea being that, if he takes Harrison's place, Eobard can push up the creation of Star Labs, and, by extension, the Flash, who he can then use to get back to the future. So, over the next 15 years, Eobard does just that, setting off the particle accelerator in late 2013 and creating a number of metahumans in Central City, including the Flash himself. This is where the first season of The Flash picks up, with Eobard, Caitlin, and Cisco training Barry to get as fast as possible to fight all the new metahumans and protect the city. Eobard himself popped in every once in a while as the Reverse Flash to give Barry extra motivation to train harder and go faster, with pretty decent results. Of course, Eobard is eventually revealed, after which he talks Barry into running back in time to save his mom, allowing Eobard to use a time sphere to go through the portal Barry made to make his way back to the future. Thanks to his future self, however, Barry decided against saving his mom and instead ran back to the present, stopping Eobard from going home. They wind up fighting for a bit, but Eobard eventually gets erased from existence after his ancestor, Eddie Thawne, killed himself. Despite this, we later saw Eobard again in the appropriately named Season 2 episode, The Reverse Flash Returns. This isn't the same Eobard we saw back in the first season though. For one thing, this version's from Eobard's past, during the time when he was running back in time trying to figure out who the Flash is. And on top of that, this version's also a timeline remnant. Either way, this version pops up in 2016 and interacts with Team Flash, setting the stage for Eobard to learn about how the Flash came into existence. While Barry does manage to beat and lock up Eobard at first, The fact that Cisco was being affected by the changes to the timeline forced Barry to let Eobard go and send him back to the future. We later saw the original Thawne again in the episode Flashback when 2016 Barry, trying to find a way to get faster to beat Zoom, ran back in time and started asking Thawne about the speed equation the future speedster had been using to make himself faster throughout season 1. But because Barry wasn't as slick as he thought, Thawne quickly figured out that something was up and nearly killed Barry until he thought his plans would get screwed over if he did.
Anything happens to me, you never make it back home.
Skipping ahead a few episodes to the season 2 finale, after defeating Zoom, the 2016 version of Barry runs back to the year 2000 and stops Eobard from killing Nora, resulting in the Flashpoint timeline. Here we see Eobard locked up in a power dampening cell by Barry in the alternate 2016, while Barry gets to goof off and enjoy his new quote-unquote better life for a few months. But because Barry started losing his powers and memories in this new timeline, he eventually let Thawne go and has him run back to 2000 to kill Nora and restore the timeline. After doing so, Eobard takes Barry to the 2016 of the next timeline, the post-Flashpoint timeline, and takes off to do something, nobody really knows what. Maybe he was manipulating the timeline so the version of him in Crisis on Earth X could still have the Harrison Wells face, who knows. Either way, this is where his plotline in season 2 of Legends occurs, with Thawne traveling through time and eventually finding himself being chased by the Black Flash. He realizes that because Eddie Thawne killed himself in 2015, he's no longer supposed to exist, and thanks to Barry taking him out of his place in time while creating Flashpoint, he's become a paradox. Over the course of the season, Eobard eventually managed to put together the Spear of Destiny and used it to rewrite reality, but thanks to the Legends, Black Flash eventually caught up to Eobard and erased him once again. Now you'd think this would have been the end of it, but Thawne survived yet again and eventually made his way to Earth X, where he joined up with Dark Arrow and Overgirl in their invasion of Earth 1 during the Crisis on Earth X crossover in 2017. It's never really explained how Thawne managed to get around getting erased from existence again, but it's possible that he managed to use the negative speed force to shield himself from the timeline change, much like how Harry theorized his timeline remnant managed to come back to 2016 back in the Reverse Flash Returns.
It's possible Eobard was in the Speed Force, protecting him like a bomb shelter.
Either way, towards the end of the crossover, Eobard comes face to face with the Flash again, but thanks to the power of shitty writing, Barry just lets him run away.
Get out of here.
Come on, Barry, the man killed a bunch of people, including your mom. At least knock him out and lock him up or something. Well, whatever. Eobard does eventually find himself in 2034, long after the Flash's disappearance in 2024. Somehow, he wound up captured and imprisoned in Iron Heights, with Cicadas Dagger being used to keep him powerless and restrained until his death sentence is carried out 15 years later in 2049. But there's a catch. Thanks to Barry and Nora not only coming to him for help with neutralizing Cicadas Dagger during the What's Past is Prologue episode, but also telling him why they were there.
You're gonna fix this for me.
To do what?
Drain dark matter.
Who's Dark Matter?
Cicadas!
He's able to form a plan. Not long before his execution, Thawne gained Nora's trust, and after getting her to travel back to 2018 and help Barry destroy the Starlab satellite, managed to set up a series of events that eventually led to the dagger being destroyed in the past. As the timeline started to reset, Thawne, no longer trapped by the dagger, managed to break out of Iron Heights and nearly escape before the arrival of Barry and Nora. But after a battle with Team Flash, he managed to run off again anyway, promising to meet Barry again during the next crisis. And that's it. That's my take on the entire Reverse Flash timeline as we've seen it up till season 5 of The Flash. Doesn't really seem all that complicated when you lay it out like that, huh? Of course, all that's still ignoring the main issue of Eobard's timeline, that being how he always seems to be aware of everything he did in earlier episodes, even when it doesn't make any sense. Seriously, how does Eobard get erased from time twice and still remember who he even is, let alone everything he'd need to do to accomplish any of his long-term plans?
Just as the human body is made up of DNA, so too is the multiverse made up of its own unique source code. I have cracked that code, so the timeline may be malleable, but my knowledge will be intractable.
Oh, that's how. Using the Speed Force language, something that doesn't change regardless of whatever changes are made to the timeline, Eobard was always able to record everything he was trying to do, so his knowledge of the previous timelines was always up to date, no matter what he ended up doing. No wonder he still knew about Cisco and Caitlin by the time he ended up on Legends. The Speed Force language always made sure he wouldn't forget.
Because I am the only speedster that knows how to manipulate the timeline to get what I want.
Well, damn, all that's pretty crazy, but it actually makes some sense for now. Hopefully it makes just as much sense later this year when we finally start getting around to all that crisis stuff, am I right? But anyways guys, if you agreed with anything I said in this video, or if you have your own thoughts you want to throw out there, then go ahead and let me know in the comments down below. Otherwise, I will see you all next time. Hey, thanks for watching. If you like this video, then go ahead and click that like button, and if you're new, maybe consider clicking that subscribe button too. I've also got links to my Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, Instagram, and Patreon in the description. You should probably check those out too. And if you want to see more of my content, then you can click the link to my last video. It's right there in the middle of your screen. Alright, and I will see you all next time.